ஆரம்பிக்கலாங்களா?
They think Kaithi was just a one-night story. They're wrong. Men like Dilly don't disappear. They survive. They adapt. They wait. He doesn't wear uniforms. He doesn't give speeches. But when war comes to the streets, men like Dilly are the last ones standing. They thought he was history. A name whispered once, then filed away, then forgotten. Because ghosts are easier to live with than men who remember everything. He didn't disappear. He stepped back. Watched the city rot in familiar ways. Watched poison learn new routes. Watched systems pretend control was permanent. He learned patience. While others chase power, he studied consequence. Because real wars don't begin with violence. They begin with silence. The night everything shifted, he didn't arrive with an army. He arrived with intent. No announcements, no symbols, no warnings, just pressure. Every move after that night felt different, as if someone unseen had entered the room. Orders hesitated. Chains of command bent. Confidence thinned. Because someone was watching who had already survived the worst. He didn't fight for dominance, he fought for collapse. Not the loud kind, the kind that happens inside systems, trust breaking, fear redistributing, loyalty turning conditional. The city didn't see him, but it felt him. In delayed responses, in sudden corrections, in men who stopped sleeping properly. They searched for a face, a name, a location. But you can't hunt a memory. He moved like a thought, appearing only where certainty existed too comfortably. Every time the Empire adjusted, it adjusted wrong, because he wasn't reacting. He was guiding, letting enemies expose themselves, letting allies reveal limits, letting systems collapse under their own weight. That was the real war. No front lines, no final battles, only erosion. And when violence came, it was never emotional, never rushed, necessary, precise. Enough to remind everyone that legends don't need to stay visible to remain dangerous. They called him many things: leader, threat, problem. They never called him what he truly was: a reminder that power is borrowed, that control expires, that silence is never empty. The war didn't begin because he wanted it. It began because the city forgot him. And ghosts don't forgive being forgotten. Because empires don't fall to armies. They fall to men who know exactly where to stand and when to disappear. He didn't inherit power, he claimed it. Not through bloodlines, not through politics, through fear that learned to kneel. Rolex wasn't born a king. Kings wait for permission. He became something worse, a certainty. Where others negotiated, he decided. Where others threatened, he executed. Where others ruled from distance, he stood close enough to smell fear. Violence wasn't his language, it was his punctuation. Short, final, unapologetic. He didn't believe in chaos. Chaos wastes energy. He believed in hierarchy. Everyone had a place, and he decided where it was. The city didn't just fear him, it adjusted to him. Schedules changed, routes shifted, silence learned new meanings. That's when power becomes real, when the world moves without being told. They called him a devil, not because he was cruel, because he was consistent. Mercy confused people, fear educated them. But devils don't rule forever, because somewhere, quietly, someone was watching, not reacting, studying. A man who understood that empires don't fall by attacking the throne. They fall by cutting the ground beneath it. Rolex ruled the night, but the night doesn't own memory. Every execution created a witness. Every order created a fracture. He didn't notice at first. Kings rarely do, because crowns narrow vision. By the time he felt it, the city had already learned something dangerous. The devil could bleed, and once fear sees blood, it stops obeying. Rolex didn't panic. He adapted. He always does. But adaptation has limits when the war stops being about dominance and becomes about exposure. Because the most dangerous enemy is not the one who wants your crown, it's the one who wants the world to see it fall. And when that realization settled in, Rolex understood the truth too late. He wasn't fighting men anymore. He was fighting time. And time never bows. The crowned devil didn't lose his throne in a single night. He felt it loosen. Slowly, quietly, just enough to know. Even devils are temporary when ghosts decide to walk again. Weapons are usually created. He wasn't. It was revealed. There was a time when he believed silence was safety. That distance could erase memory. That a quiet life could outrun violence. He was wrong. Because some men don't escape war. They carry it inside them. Leo didn't enter the conflict with ideology. He didn't choose sides. The conflict chose him. What makes him dangerous is not strength, not skill, not rage. It's unpredictability. He doesn't follow patterns. He doesn't respect structures. He doesn't wait for permission. Where systems plan, he reacts. Where empires calculate, he disrupts. That's why control fails around him. Violence doesn't excite him. It interrupts him. And interruptions trigger instinct. Every attempt to categorize him collapses. Hero, villain, survivor. None of them fit. Because he doesn't operate on belief. He operates on reflex. And reflex doesn't negotiate. The city feels it when he moves. Not as fear, as imbalance. Things stop aligning properly. Plans break timing. Confidence slips. He doesn't want dominance. He wants distance. But distance is impossible when the past keeps pulling the trigger. That's the truth no one understands. Leo isn't unstable because he's weak. He's unstable because he's restrained. And restraint, when it breaks, doesn't break cleanly. It explodes. That's why every empire fears him, even when they pretend not to. You can predict kings. You can map devils. You can negotiate with ghosts. But you can't forecast a man who doesn't know which part of himself will answer first. The real danger isn't what Leo will do. It's that when he finally decides to stop running, the war won't recognize itself anymore. Because weapons don't think about consequences. They only end conflicts. And sometimes they end worlds.
Every universe pretends balance is permanent. It never is. Balance is just tension that hasn't snapped yet. In this world, forces moved in different directions, believing distance meant safety, believing time would soften impact. They were wrong, because momentum doesn't disappear, it converges. Ghosts watched from the shadows, patient, calculating, waiting for systems to expose themselves. Devils ruled through fear, believing crowns made them immovable. Weapons existed in restraint, unstable not because they were weak, but because they were unfinished. Speed tore through silence, forcing decisions before morality could react. And somewhere beyond all of them, an event approached. Not rushing, not warning, just arriving. Each force believed the collision would come later, on another street, in another time. But inevitability doesn't negotiate. The closer they moved, the louder the silence became. Plans began overlapping. Territories blurred. Intentions conflicted. Control started slipping, not because someone attacked, but because too many truths occupied the same space. That's how collisions begin, not with violence, with incompatibility. Ghosts cannot remain unseen forever. Devils cannot rule uncontested. Weapons cannot stay restrained. Speed cannot slow. Events cannot be postponed. When all of them exist in one system, impact is not a possibility. It is a requirement. The city felt it before it happened. Not fear, pressure. like the air before a storm that doesn't need thunder to announce itself. Everyone adjusted too late, because collision doesn't ask who deserves to win. It only asks what survives contact. And when it finally happens, there will be no clean sides, no clear endings, no return to balance. Only a new shape of order built from broken certainties. That is the truth of the LCU. Not war, not peace, collision, and once it begins, nothing moves away untouched. Speed is not movement, it's intention without hesitation. Benz doesn't arrive. He collides. Where others plan routes, he chooses momentum. Where others hesitate, he accelerates. Because speed doesn't give fear time to think. Violence usually announces itself. He doesn't. By the time you hear him, the decision is already over. Benz is not reckless. That's the lie people tell to survive him. He is precise, just faster than morality. Rules slow you down. Questions create friction. Mercy costs seconds, and seconds get you killed. He understands something most men don't. Control isn't about strength. It's about who dictates pace. When Benz moves, systems fail to catch up. Plans collapse mid-sentence. Orders arrive too late. That's why he terrifies empires. You can predict strategy, you can counter power, but you can't negotiate with velocity. Violence bends around him differently. Not explosive, directional. Every action pushes forward. No looking back, no clean exits. He doesn't enjoy destruction. He respects efficiency. End it fast, move on faster. The city feels him like a sudden drop, heart racing, breath shortened, balance lost. Because speed removes choice, and without choice, truth appears. Fear reveals loyalty. Pressure exposes weakness. Panic unmasks leadership. Benz is not chaos. He is acceleration. And acceleration breaks structures that rely on time to function. That's why every war changes the moment he enters it. Because once speed meets violence, there is no reset. Only impact. And whatever survives, the collision will never move the same way again.
The universe does not ask who is good. It only asks who is necessary. In this world, morality is a luxury. Survival is a discipline. The LCU was never about heroes and villains. It was about pressure. What happens to people when systems fail them? When silence becomes policy? When violence becomes language? Every man here is shaped by circumstance, not destiny. Some choose control. Some choose chaos. Some choose disappearance. But none of them choose peace, because peace requires trust, and trust doesn't survive power. Empires rise not because they are strong, but because people are tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of questioning. Tired of choosing. So they hand over control to whoever promises order. That's how devils are crowned. And when order becomes suffocating, ghosts are born. Men who don't want thrones. Men who don't want applause. Men who only want balance restored, even if it costs everything. Then there are weapons, not built in labs, built by trauma. Men who don't think in ideology, but in instinct. Men who don't believe in systems, because systems failed them first. They don't bring strategy, they bring disruption. And disruption is terrifying to those who depend on predictability. The LCU believes one thing above all else. Power is temporary. Violence is cyclical. Silence is never empty. Every action creates ripples. Every decision leaves residue. Every war plants seeds for the next. There is no final victory here, only pauses between conflicts. The philosophy is simple, but brutal. You don't escape the system. You either become part of it, break it, or haunt it. And the most dangerous men are the ones who understand this early, because they don't chase justice. They don't seek redemption. They don't wait for approval. They act when the world becomes unbearable. That is the LCU, not a universe of heroes, a universe of consequences, where empires bleed quietly, where ghosts pull strings, where weapons destabilize balance, and where the question is never who will win, but what will remain when the silence finally breaks.
This is not a threat. Threats need reactions. This is a warning, because everything that could be ignored has already been ignored. Everything that could be contained has already escaped. What remains is momentum. The system believes it still has time. It doesn't. Time stopped being neutral the moment power chose comfort over truth. You crowned devils and called it order. You silenced ghosts and called it peace. You restrained weapons and called it control. You were wrong every time. Because silence does not erase conflict. It stores it. Every compromise you buried has been accumulating interest. Every decision delayed has been choosing sides without you. This world is no longer fragile. It is overloaded. And overloaded systems don't fail slowly. They collapse suddenly and blame no one. There will be no announcement when it begins. No clear enemy to point at. No single moment to undo. You will feel it as confusion first, as misalignment, as decisions that arrive too late to matter. By the time you call it war, the war will already be history. This is your final warning, not because destruction is coming, but because change no longer needs permission. Ghosts are moving. Devils are exposed. Weapons are losing restraint. Speed is accelerating beyond control. And the event is no longer approaching. It is here. After this, there will be no return to balance, only adaptation. Those who understand this will survive. Those who don't will become lessons. This is not the end. This is the last moment you are allowed to believe you still have a choice. Events don't arrive loudly. They arrive inevitably. AA23 is not a man you prepare for. Preparation assumes patterns. He is what happens when patterns stop working. Empires fear enemies. They fear weapons. They fear exposure. But they don't know how to fear an event. Because events don't choose sides. They change environments. AA23 doesn't need to dominate. He doesn't need to destroy. His presence is enough. Systems react around him without understanding why. Plans feel outdated the moment they're made. Confidence erodes before contact. That's how you know something fundamental is shifting. Weapons escalate wars. Leaders extend them. Events end eras. AA23 isn't chaos. Chaos is random. He is convergence. Every mistake, every hidden compromise, every delayed consequence, moving toward a single moment. He doesn't chase control. Control chases him. Because once an event begins, stopping it requires rewriting reality. And reality resists. The most dangerous thing about AA23 is not what he does. It's what others do because they sense him coming. Alliances rush. Decisions accelerate. Violence spikes prematurely. Fear acts early. And early action creates irreversible damage. By the time AA23 arrives, the war has already lost its shape. There are no heroes in events. No villains either. Only survivors trying to adapt to a new order. When history looks back, it won't mark his entrance as a battle. It will mark it as a shift. Before AA23. After AA23, because some men don't fight wars. They become the moment wars are remembered by. The warning was never meant to stop them. It was meant to prepare the world for what comes next, because ghosts don't stay alone forever. And devils never rule without consequence. The weapon moved first, not out of strategy, not out of belief, out of instinct. Restraint cracked. And when it did, the system felt imbalance ripple through every layer. Violence didn't explode. It shifted, unpredictable, personal, impossible to contain. Speed followed, not chasing destruction, forcing it. Momentum tore through hesitation. Decisions collapsed mid-thought. Control failed to keep pace. There was no time to adapt, only time to react. And reaction is never enough. Then the environment changed, not with noise, not with spectacle, with presence. An event doesn't need permission. It doesn't need victory. It only needs inevitability. Everything began bending around it. All the shortcuts, all the compromises, all the lies told for convenience. They converged. The weapon destabilized the field. Speed shattered the structure. and the event rewrote the rules entirely. This was never a war meant to be won. It was a correction. The old order didn't fall screaming. It failed quietly, confused, misaligned, obsolete. And in that silence, the future stood visible for the first time. Unstable, unforgiving, unavoidable. There were no heroes left to cheer, no villains left to crown, only survivors learning how expensive certainty really is. The LCU does not end with peace. It ends with awareness. That control is temporary. That violence evolves. That speed and instinct and inevitability cannot coexist inside the same system without tearing it apart. This wasn't the end of the universe. It was the moment it stopped pretending balance was possible. What comes next will not ask.